Why the high jump expedition?
The high jump expedition has been one of the most debated and talked about expeditions in human history. You see, right after the Second World War, that is in 1945, Europe lay in ruins while the US had emerged as world's dominant naval and industrial power. Even though the Cold War had not yet officially begun, tensions were already escalating. So instead of focusing solely on oceans and continents, military planners were beginning to think differently about geography, considering the strategic importance of the Arctic and Antarctic regions. Now, Antarctica, once viewed as little more than an icy wilderness, was becoming strategically important. You see, the high jump expedition came up from previous or early expeditions, even though they are being considered minor expeditions. Now, there was this one that triggered the high jump expedition. That is what was done by the Germans. So between 1938 and then 1939, the Nazi Germany launched the New Swabia expedition, officially known as the German Antarctic Expedition. The mission surveyed approximately 600,000 square kilometers of Queen Maud land using aerial photography and dropped aluminium markers bearing the symbols of Germany territorial interest. Now, historically, records indicate that Germany conducted area surveys and then claimed a region they called New Chabaland. However, there's no credible evidence that were established. Now, I don't know if it was something that the US made the rest of the world believe or something else because the US claimed that the Germans, as the Nazis, had facilities or military bases on Antarctica, but never had an evidence of it. So the high jump expedition was just made up to go and find the military bases or facilities of the Germans on Antarctica. Until now, we didn't have any evidence of Germans there. Now, so the high jump expedition, it was officially named the United States Navy Antarctic Development Program, and it was between 1946 to 1947. They had, I think, set off uh, in August 1946, but got to Antarctica in December 1946 and left Antarctica around February 1947, if I'm right. The operation was organized under the direction of Rear Admiral Richard Byrd, while Operation Command rested with Rear Admiral Richard Cruzen, commander of Task Force 68. At that time, there had been earlier expeditions to Antarctica, as I said earlier, by example, the German. But these expeditions were all minors, comparing it to the high jump expedition. Now, with the high jump expedition, we had approximately about 4,700 personnel there. We had 13 naval vessels, 33 aircraft, an aircraft carrier, two icebreakers, destroyers, cargo ships, and many more. So, considering this or comparing this to the earlier expeditions, you could tell that the high jump expeditions was one of the greatest expeditions to Antarctica. Now, among the principal ships, we had the USS Mount Olympus, serving as the flagship. We had the USS Philippine Sea, USS Bottom Island. You see, these are all major machineries or technologies that were being sent by the US to Antarctica. The US clearly documented their mission objectives. So they had this objective that they put down for the high jump expedition. Now, they said they were going to train personnel for operation in extreme polar environments. That is testing their ships, their aircraft, their vehicles, communication equipment, and other survival systems. And again, establishing Little America Fort. Earlier, America had established Little America 1, the first, Little America the second, Little America the third, and now they were going to establish Little America the fourth, the newest American Antarctic Research Station. And again, had this documented that they were trying to expand the aerial photography coverage of Antarctica. And again, investigate whether permanent Antarctic bases could be established. You see, now, Little Antarctica 4, that is what was one of the missions of high jump expedition, served as the expedition's operational base and supported scientific research, aircraft operations, and logistics. Now, the high jump expedition, which was extraordinary, perhaps the greatest achievement, was the aerial photography, which photographed nearly 1.5 million square miles. Comparing it to the Germans, which was around 600,000, they had 1.5 million square miles, covering roughly 60% of Antarctica's coastline. For many regions, these photographs represented humanity's very first detailed image of Antarctica. You see, once we talk about these expeditions, we can't just leave out the cost of human lives. So that's why they had careful planned about the high jump expedition. I think on December 30th, 1946, that is when they were there. Overall, 4 members of the expedition lost their lives. Meaning, even though this expedition was well calculated, well planned, we still had casualties, that is, losing lives with the expedition. So immediately after the Second World War, now some operational records remained classified for years because it was somehow a military expedition, because they thought the Germans, the Nazis, had already had military facilities or bases in or on the Antarctica. Now, among the most popular claims that the US raised, that is discovering the secret Nazi base by the Germans, and then encountered advanced unknown technology. Now, they found an entrance to the Holy Earth. The Holy Earth, we'll talk about that, I think, another time. They located an ancient underground civilization. They got to know that, no, with what we are seeing is just the tip of the iceberg of Antarctica. So there were underground civilizations which appeared in books, documentaries, websites, and then online discussions. But however, the official expedition reports, declassified Navy records, and then surviving crew accounts, we could see that there was no evidence showing that they had found Nazi bases there. They have found the Holy Earth entrance, as they were saying, as at that time. One frequently cited source is Admiral Richard Byrd himself. After returning from the expedition, Byrd warned that future wars could involve aircraft traveling over the polar regions. In the context of 1947, this reflected concerns about long-range aviation and emerging Cold War. So he was talking about Cold War, which will be coming up, but rather, over time, some writers detached these remarks and then interpreted it or reinterpreted it as unknown technologies hidden in Antarctica or unknown civilizations in Antarctica. Now, perhaps the greatest legacy of Operation High Jump is not mystery, but preparation. The expedition laid the logistical scientific groundwork for Operation Windmill, which read an Antarctic mapping, and Operation Deep Freeze. So after the high jump operation, we had the Operation Windmill, and then Operation Deep Freeze, which established a continuous American scientific presence on the continent. Its data also contributed to the broader international efforts and then culminated in the Antarctic Treaty of 1959. Now, we all know about the Antarctic Treaty of 1959, which was signed by many countries, that the Antarctica wouldn't be touched or even explored, reserving Antarctica for peaceful purposes and scientific operations. You see, Operation High Jump occupies a unique place in history because it sits at the intersection of exploration, science, military strategy, and public imagination. Yes, the documented facts alone are remarkable. Thousands of personnel, dozens of ships, aircraft, pioneering area photography, major scientific discoveries, and logistical achievements that transformed Antarctic exploration. At the same time, the unanswered questions and the continent's remoteness have inspired generations of speculations. Now, we are all speculating that what actually is going on in Antarctica, considering the findouts that was brought from the high jump expedition. So, distinguishing between evidence and interpretation remains essential. The enduring fascination with Operation High Jump reminds us that history is often shaped not only by what happened but also by the stories people tell afterwards. Now, technologies have emerged as time goes on, and so now, as researchers, historians, or maybe simply curious observers, our task is to follow the evidence rather than relying on facts, as the US did in 1947, saying that the Germans had already gotten bases there. We should have the evidence that, okay, today we could see bases of US, we could see ships that are trying to explore the Antarctica, even though they are doing a treaty by countries that it should be a peaceful continent on its own. Do you think that the US and other powerful countries are hiding from the rest of the world what is actually going on in Antarctica? Or do you think civilization or has said or been anticipated that there were much advanced or more advanced technology in Antarctica is true? I think we'll have to reserve this for another time. Thank you very much.